After a extremely weird 2020 shortened condensed season, we are finally through all the rounds. Fellas, the finals are just about here. I can taste it. There's a different feeling in the air, even all the way over here in the States. There's a feeling running through the atmosphere right now. It's my first final, so it's my first rodeo. Ain't the first rodeo for you fellas, but I'm sure we're all just as excited, if not more than me, for what's been a weird 2020, but what's going to be a crazy finals that we have in store for us.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to see how this season is going to end. We normally would be just coming off the grand final, which is usually held the last weekend in September, and now we got to get ready for October football. This is the latest that the season has ended since 1923. This is the latest end to a season. It ended on October 20th this year, and all 8 teams are left to battle it out to see who will play for the grand final in Brisbane under the lights on October 24th.
Oh yeah, of course that is the glorious voice of Brian Barrish, the head of social media and all that fun stuff with the USAFL. We had them on the show a little while back. That was a really good one. Check that out if you haven't already. And then, of course, the other voice you're going to be hearing today is our official AFL correspondent, the man, Coach Donnie Hess.
How we doing, everybody?
Of course, we had the first take of Donnie's Disposal that we released earlier on Monday. Come on! Oh, I saw that sneaker. I thought that was a good name. Come on now.
Actually, no, it was good. It was
Got
good.
the alliteration and everything. Got the tie-in with the footy lingo. Okay, that checks all the boxes.
I
But
just didn't know footy would have ASMR videos.
that was the best part. But I want to start today off in anticipation of the finals. I bring you. Let's all get a nice cup of tea, gather around the fireplace, nice comfy robe, because it is history with Brian.
I feel like we need some classical music in the background. So the AFL Grand Final, before the AFL, of course, as Donnie has, I'm sure, said on at least one occasion during his brief but illustrious stint on this very podcast, the Australian Football League was once known as the Victorian Football League, and that was founded in 1897. So the Grand Final has been held almost every year since then, but the final systems have changed. And before we start, a quick explanation as to the final system, because this is unlike any other playoff system, really, that American sports fans have ever seen before. 8 teams are here in the finals, what they call the finals, and what we here in the States call the playoffs. And there's a monumental argument about that. I'm not going to get into it, but
you already did on Twitter. But
yes,
Twitter was an adventure with that one. I'll tell you that. I kind of felt bad for you there, Brian.
They were nonplussed that I called it the playoffs. But so 8 teams make the playoffs, and in the first week, the playoffs, the final system lasts 4 weeks. In this first week, which gets underway on Thursday morning, there are 4 games. Now, 2 of these games are what are called qualifying finals. They are the top 4 seeds. The first seed, Port Adelaide Power, will play the 4th seed Geelong Cats, and the 2nd seed Brisbane Lions will play the 3rd seed Richmond Tigers. Now, the winners of those games will get a bye next week and go directly into what is called the preliminary finals, which is the final 4, what we would call the semifinals. Now, the losers are still alive, but they have to come back next week and play the winners of the other 2 games on the weekend. Both of these games will be Saturday. It'll be the 5th-seeded West Coast Eagles against the 8th-seeded Collingwood Magpies, and the 6th-seeded St. Kilda Saints and the 7th-seeded Western Bulldogs. Now, those 4 teams have to win 4 games in a row, whereas the other 4 teams have to win 3 games, and can lose their first game and still win. Starting next week is the semifinals, which is actually the quarterfinals. They call it the semifinals, and I'll explain why in a moment.
Okay.
And from that point on, it's a 6-team knockout tournament. The preliminary finals are in 2 weeks, and then, as I mentioned, October 24th is the grand final. Now, this is the first grand final to be played outside of Melbourne. It's the first one to be played outside Victoria, of course, because of the COVID lockdown restrictions that are currently in place. As I mentioned, this is the oldest grand final, or the latest grand final of the previous one, as I said, 1923. And then this is the first one to be played at night. Normally, it is played at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2:30 in the afternoon. The start time is at 6:30 p.m. Brisbane time, which means it'll be a 4:30 a.m. start on the East Coast. Get your coffee ready.
4:30 for you, for Donnie. It's 3:30 for me, 2:30 for our co-host Jalen, if his Bulldogs actually make it far enough at least. Nice, bright early 1:30 start time. At least it's on a Saturday, so I better not be working that day. I'll tell you that.
Whenever you do,
I'm gonna make breakfast pies for that game. I'm all set for that. I'm making breakfast party pies. I even had
ship them on over to Boise.
I'll
I'll give you my address.
Might get some sausage rolls, get some pavlovas, that sort of thing. Just make it a day. Now, I do want to explain the history real quick. Is how, because this is something that is very unique to sports, and there are a couple of sports that have picked up something similar. Curling, rugby, as well. Softball, believe it or not, uses a form of this. So when the VFL was formed in 1897, they had all broken away from a league called the VFA, the Victorian Football Association, and the VFA, they didn't have a playoff system. It was whoever was the first past the post. Well, that first year, they decided, well, we're going to have an extra competition to determine who the winner is. And they took the top 4 teams and they had a round robin. And whoever had the best record at the end of the round robin was the winner. And in that year, it was Essendon. Now, the only way there would have been a grand final is if 2 teams would have tied for first, and there would have been a championship game. That didn't happen. Essendon won. They won the 3rd game 14-8, which still holds the record for the lowest number of goals in a match by both teams, 1, and number of points by both teams in a match, 22. The format was so popular that the next year they said all 8 teams, because there were 8 teams in the league, all 8 teams would make it, and where you finished determined where which group you would be in. So there would be 2 groups of 4 teams each after the regular season. The winners of each group would play off in a grand final. There was a proviso, however, that if you finished first and you finished the finals with 2 wins, or you didn't finish first and but you had finished first in a regular season but didn't make the final, you were reserved a spot in a grand final. So it was almost a right to challenge whoever the winner was. So they did this for 3 more years until 1900, when 6th place Melbourne, who won only 6 games all season, won the premiership. And everybody scratched their heads and said, this is a stupid way of doing things. We need to do something completely different. So the newspaper at the time was called the Argus. It was the influential newspaper of the day in Melbourne. And they said, well, here's what you should do. You should take the first place team and the 3rd place team, have them play in one semifinal. The 2nd place team and the 4th place team play in the other semifinal. The winners meet in the grand final. This way, you always have a championship, and there's only the teams that deserve to make it. I think it was Melbourne who finished in 3rd. It was I think it was Essendon who finished in 3rd that year, ended up winning. And immediately everybody said, well, what's the point of finishing in 1st if you have the same chance of winning than the 4th place team does? So they amended the Argus system the following year to add a right to challenge clause. And what that means is it was the same knockout tournament like it normally was. 1st place 3, 2nd place 4, and the winner went to the final. However, if the 1st place team lost either of their games, either in the semifinals or the finals, they earned what was called a right to challenge whoever won the final. So, and in a grand final. So theoretically, and this happened on several occasions, the 1st place team could lose, get a week off, and then play in the championship game, just because they finished in 1st. The VFL did this from 1902 to 1930, and there was 1 year in the 20s in 1924 where they experimented with a round robin. Essendon won that year without a grand final. But by the 1930s, Collingwood had won 4 in a row. By the late 1920s, Collingwood had won 4 in a row. People were tired of Collingwood winning. The other thing is that there was no set number of games, because if the first place team won both of their games, they were crowned champions.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, that final match would outdraw the grand final that was created by the right to challenge. So the league, with the help of Ken Mcintyre, who was a lawyer and mathematician, and with Percy Paige, who was the secretary of the Richmond Football Club, designed what was called the Paige-Mcintyre playoff. The first 2 teams would play, and the winner would go directly to the grand final.
Mm-hmm.
The loser would play the winner of the 3-4 game in a preliminary final to determine the other semifinalists. So those first 2 teams, by finishing first or second, you got a safety net in the first game. But if you won, you went directly to the grand final. And that was instantly popular because they would have 1 game a week. The schedule was already set. And they used that from 1931 to 1971, when they added a 5th team. And Ken Mcintyre, who invented the 4-team system, invented the 5-team system. They added another week of games, and the top seed, without going into too much of it, you can look it up. The top seed now only had to win 2 games. The second and third place teams only had to win 3 games, and the fourth and fifth place teams had to win 4 games. In 1991, they went to a 6-team system, and in 1994, they finally expanded, or 95, they finally expanded to the 8-team system. The current system was started to use in 2000, where it guarantees the top 4 teams that safety net. Before, it was like a normal playoff. 1 would play 8, 2 would play 7, 3 would, and so on. But then only the top 2 winners would get the bye in the next week. Mm-hmm. That's basically the history of it. And on a normal year, you would see more than 100,000 people, or around 100,000 people, at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. They make a holiday out of it in Victoria on Friday. Everybody gets off. They have a grand final parade Friday morning. There's a grand final breakfast. There's a lot of hubbub around Melbourne. Unfortunately, that won't be the case this year. It'll be a little bit more subdued. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we are here, that we've even gotten to this point, is truly history making in so many ways. And I know that I'm excited for this final run, and hopefully we get a good crowd around the world and mm-hmm. here in the States to watch the grand final.
Well, that was amazing. I am thoroughly impressed. Donnie told me that, hey, Brian has some history he wants to talk about when we start things off. That was good. That was history with Brian.
And good morning to everybody, because I think that took about 24 hours to do. But
that's awesome. That I had no idea it took that much trial and error, but that's really impressive.
And it's definitely better than the NHL, not to get off on a tangent, but the NHL has had some just really awful playoff systems. If you go all the way back, it's just awful. But there's still some criticisms around this. But I have said that the NFL should adopt something like this. Have the division winners have a chance to play. Get a week off and make them play. The other thing that's going to come into factor, and they've been doing this for the last couple of years, is that that is the bye round. There was mm-hmm. no football this past weekend. They did that because a couple of years ago, a couple of teams rested their players because they would have had to turn around and play again.
Yeah.
And so they did that to kind of, force teams to play their full squad. So.
That's fair.
Well, and the other thing too that I've noticed too, that a lot of the arguments that they come up with now is that when you have injured players going into the later games of the season, is that sometimes this bye week can actually allow them to get healthy enough to be able to play. So then you have more of the premier players playing in the finals, instead of, if you didn't have the bye week, mm-hmm. some of them missing out because they're still injured. So it's kind of give or take a little bit with who you ask. Some people don't like the bye because they want to keep the footy going. But with the footy festivals that they've had a couple times this year, and these players having to play a lot of games in a short amount mm-hmm. of time, I kind of like the bye this year because it lets everybody decompress. Mm-hmm. And then lets the players decompress a little because they played so many games, especially in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. And now a lot of these teams are getting back to full strength coming into the finals. So that means the best players are going to be on the field. So it isn't going to be one of those where your danger fields for Geelong are missing. So they're not as good as they should be. So in some situations, this year is really, really good having this bye.
Well, that my take on that whole thing is that it's honestly just best for business from the league's perspective, because especially in the playoffs, you want your best guys to be able to play. And so if you give them that extra week to rest up, you're going to see more stars in the playoffs. That's more eyes on the product. That's a better product on the field. So I think it's really a win-win across that. Another thing I want to talk about, in America, we do a lot of things right around our sports. Australia does a lot of things right. One thing that I would advocate, it should be a national holiday for the Super Bowl of the NFL. We should be able to have that a Friday, or they have the grand finals on Saturday there, so they take the Friday off. If our Super Bowl is on Sunday, that following Monday should be a national holiday. You know, just putting it
I feel
out
like
there.
it should be a national holiday for the team that wins.
At least
Just the city.
just
Just
that,
the city
yeah.
that wins.
that would
Just
be.
the city that
I mean,
wins.
so we don't have a bunch of drunk people going to work on Monday anyway. Most people just like to take that day off too. So hey,
Yeah.
I love a good national holiday. I love another Monday off of school for the last year or whatever I'm in it. So I'm okay with that.
It's such a cultural phenomenon though in Melbourne, because it is the mecca of the game, and so and again it goes back to its VFL roots. You would always have, there was a time when all of the finals, and mind you we're talking only 4 or 5 games, all the finals were played at the MCG. So there was this I guess this big cultural happening surrounding the games and surrounding the end of the season. That's why eventually, and the holiday is only a couple of years old. I think Dan Andrews, who's the current premier of Victoria, was the one that enacted it. That's what it is. And obviously it's a bigger cultural thing here in the US, but that's why they do that. And it'd be good to see, it would be nice to see them embrace some of the things that they do for the grand final in Australia. It's so different, because you're talking about a smaller population versus us.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and if I remember correctly too, like you kind of said, it's only Victoria that takes the holiday.
Yeah.
South Australia and West Australia don't actually take it. But the last rumors that I'm hearing from Dan Andrews' office is the potential is they may actually still get that Friday off.
Ooh.
I'm not sure. They said there's still a lot of conjecture. It'll depend on COVID cases and everything like that. And the good part is, to all of our Victorian listeners listening, please keep strong. You're getting there. It's getting better each and every day. They did have a little bit of a spike in the last couple of days, but not like nothing like what we're seeing here in the States. So keep everything going that they can maybe get done with the lockdown, especially our guys in the Cobra cast. Those 2 guys are awesome. So I'm hoping they can be able to enjoy the grand final, not all in lockdown, but we'll see.
100%. Glad you mentioned our Victorian viewers. I'm sure we have them there. Been so lucky to be able to expand international over the last couple months or so. 5% of our audience is from Australia, and we love you guys so much, because I really can't wait until I'm able to take a visit there, so I can be able to go watch some games in person, because that would be fantastic. But I think it's time, gentlemen, to really get into the nitty-gritty, to get into the meat pie and potatoes of this thing. See what I did there?
I saw what you did there.
Let's move past that. But now we have the top 8 teams, the finalists for this year. They are Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Richmond, Geelong, West Coast, St Kilda, the Bulldogs, and you had Collingwood sneak into there as well. So, without further ado, let's just start off with our first qualifying round. So, the first game we have on slate is the Power and the Cats. Gentlemen, break this down and give me your winners of this one.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Oh boy, yeah. This is another one that, if you go off previous form, Geelong beat Porter about 3 or 4 weeks ago in a really lopsided game. Port really did not show up as much as I think a lot of people thought early in the year. This one's kind of tough, because Geelong did not look that impressive in their last couple of weeks, especially the game against Sydney, where they literally waited till late in the third quarter, early in the fourth, before they finally decided we're going to take over this game.
I really thought your Swans were going to take that game too.
Yeah, moving Dangerfield really killed the Swans there. But the good thing is you get a game into Ablett, you get a game into Selwood, so they're not coming in totally cold.
No.
For me, Port's inconsistency when it comes to playing the bigger teams has me a little worried. So right now, the addition of Ablett, the addition of Selwood, the strength and the abilities of this Cats team, which I think, honestly, that Swans game might have been a nice little gut check to them. Right now, I'm leaning towards the Cats in this one. I'm honestly, I think I got the Cats moving on to the preliminary final after this one. So I got the Cats.
I agree with Donnie. Port Adelaide, on paper, the fact that they were the first wire-to-wire winner in the AFL since Essendon did it in 2000, I think is a pretty good feat. But I think if you kind of look at their form over the last couple of games, just at least since the last two times that these two teams have met, Geelong had that one stinker of a game against Richmond, and then they come back and as Donnie said, they barely defeated Sydney. But by the same token, they've had a week to rest, and he mentioned Ablett, he mentioned Dangerfield, he mentioned Hawkins, he mentioned Selwood. These are guys that have long been battle tested over the course of many years in finals. They have a lot more experience than Port Adelaide does going deep into the finals. Port Adelaide hasn't played in a grand final since 2007 when they lost to Geelong by 119 points. But I agree. I think that as good as Port Adelaide has looked, they've looked a little bit better in the last couple of games. I think Geelong's got more experience in this realm, so I think Geelong will win. I think the Cats are probably going to end up winning this by about 3 or 4 goals in the end.
Well, ain't that just something? Because all three of us, clean sweep for the Cats. My biggest thing on also going off of what you said, Donnie, they showed some weakness. I think that Sydney game is going to be best for them in the long run because Sydney almost caught them sleeping, and I just am not feeling well with Port Adelaide's ability to show up in the bigger games, especially that one against Geelong from a while ago. And then I really like the offensive production and consistency, a fairly good consistency we've seen from Geelong throughout the season. Most of their games being in the 70s, 80s, 90s, a few in the hundreds. And so I really like the firepower on that team. From what I've seen, Tom Hawkins is just one of the greatest players to ever step onto the pitch. And so I really like what he brings to that team. So I got Geelong in this first one too. This next,
And going off that, just one other thing too. Very few teams in this league have a guy like Dangerfield that can be dominant in the midfield and then go up forward and then be the marking, goal kicking, power forward, full forward, to switch with Hawkins. So that's another thing for me. If Dixon is not on for Port struggles because Port's got a lot of young players too. That's the other thing that kind of going off what Brian said is you've got a lot of experienced, battle-tested, finals-hardened players. Port has a lot of young players that are only in their second or third year that have gotten there.
They're talented. They're just inexperienced.
Yeah.
Very good. Yep. Very good. Very talented. But do they have the grit to be able to play in finals footy? Because this is our first time being in the finals. They weren't in the finals last year.
Yeah, there is something to say in all sports across the world that a veteran experience really does wonders when it comes to playoffs in bigger games like that. It's just a fact with that. It really is. Now also, to your point, Donnie, would you expect anything less from a guy with the name Dangerfield?
He gets no respect, I'm telling you.
Come on, man!
No, actually, he gets lots of respect.
See, with a name like Dangerfield, what he does. He's dangerous all across the field. It's a very good name to have. So hey, shout out to his parents for being able to. He's just perfect with that, straight up. The next game we have on the slate is going to be the Lions and Tigers. This one I think is a little bit more of an interesting matchup, and it's a little more of a toss-up to me. I was not as confident with my picks with these two teams. Brian, you want to start us off with this game?
Yeah, so Brisbane last year were, I think, a lot of people's picks. They were really red hot coming into the finals last year. They won 9 games in a row from round 14 on. They lost to Richmond in the last game of the season last year, and everyone said, well, maybe the magic has run out, but they ended up finishing second, and then of course they lost to the Tigers and GWS in straight sets to have an inglorious end to their season. This year, again, now they're coming in with winners of 7 in a row. Though they defeated North Melbourne by 1 point. North Melbourne was the next to last team in the league this year. They had a tough 2-point win over St Kilda. They had an 8-point win over Collingwood that, again, I wasn't really terribly impressed by, and then a 17-point win over Carlton to end the season. And one thing, and I know Donnie has mentioned this, they've been very inconsistent during the course of the year. Now they too have some really good talent, but again, you go against a Richmond side who has a core that has been a part of their 2 premiership teams over the last 3 years. Dustin Martin, until anybody really comes along, is still one of the most dangerous players, if not the most dangerous players in the league. Players like Cochin, players like Rewalt. They are the more battle tested team over the course of this, and they are the informed team. They have not had a win by less than 2 goals, as they have won 6 games in a row. They've won 6 games in a row. They've only beat Essendon by 12 points, but then 21 points over Gold Coast, 27 over West Coast, 27 over Fremantle, 26 over Geelong. They are the informed team right now, and I think that they're going to end up winning this game. Even at the Gabba, they're going to end up winning this game by about 3 or 4 goals.
Donnie.
Oh man, it sounds like a repeat. I completely agree with all those points there. And the other thing too is kind of like going off of the previous game with Dangerfield is that Dusty is another one that you can put him in the midfield and he's absolutely dominant when he wants to be, but you can move him up forward and he is a matchup nightmare because very few people can guard him. You put a big guy on him, he can outrun him. You put a small guy on him, he can outmark him and outstrength him. So really, this is another game where you have the young, talented team versus the battle-hardened team. But the other kind of caveat that you throw in is Richmond's style. Richmond play chaos footy. They want the ball on the ground. They want you to handball. They want you to play in tight spaces because that helps their game out. Brisbane is a flashy team at times. Brisbane is also an inconsistent team kicking in front of goal. And in the finals, that kills you if you cannot put scoreboard pressure on teams, especially Richmond, who is very good at goal. Now, as I kind of told you before, breaking a few hours ago, Lynch is out. He will not play in this game. For some teams, this is a massive blow. For Richmond, not so much. In 17, they won it without him. Rewalt can go with full forward. They've got all their mosquito fleet little forwards who are running and quick and do all that pressure. So I don't think you see a step back from Richmond, even though they do lose Lynch. They do lose Sydney Stack after the brain fade that is the whole strip club thing that happened there.
Oh yeah, we went to that a few recaps ago. That
exactly.
was something.
And so he is a loss, but he's not a massive loss because of all of the young talent. You probably see Toby Nankervis come in. Now the Bolt is out with his injury. So the biggest thing will be is can Brisbane put the scoreboard pressure on Richmond? Can Richmond keep up their pressure game? I, like Brian, I have Richmond in this. I like Brisbane's talent. I just don't like their consistency, and that in finals is a killer.
Well, now we already all agreed on the first game. That can't happen with this one, all right? Because believe it or not, I am going to roll with Brisbane. There's something about, at least in the first round, We'll get to the later rounds after this first one, of course, but I really like the effort and the ability they have on the pitch. What they do out there just kind of blows my mind sometimes. Like when they get hot and when they're rolling, and there's really no way to stop them. The one blemish on this is that Richmond and Brisbane did match up earlier this season, with Richmond doubling up on Brisbane 82-41. Much like we had the gut check in the last game with Geelong just barely beating Sydney. I like this game is kind of like a reminder to Brisbane. And I really, you see in this game though, the problem is the 4 goals, 17 behinds. This really could have been an absolutely different game. And I think Brisbane gets it right this time. And I like them taking this one in round 1. Now, our next game that is on the schedule is going to be the Saints and the Bulldogs. What about this one?
Your turn, Donnie.
Oh boy, yeah. This is another one that this is a coin flip.
Mm-hmm.
Like Western is hot. Western is playing really, really good footy, and thankfully they avoided the injury issues of Naughton. He did have a decompressed cheekbone, but they were able to fix it. And is the last thing that I heard, he's going to play.
That's good.
So they're high flying forward of Naughton will play. So there shouldn't be any injury issues for the Doggies in St. Kilda. Their off season of bringing in a ton of players from other clubs, some good talented players into other clubs, as we can see, got them into the finals for the first time in a long time. So this is really going to be a fun matchup. This could be the game that either team could win. Mm-hmm. I bounced back and forth because this was so hard, because there for a while I thought St. Kilda, there for a while I thought Western. I'm going to go with the Doggies because the Doggies have a little bit more experience. They have a few more players on their list that went through the 2016 run where they went from the same position, 7th place, all the way to the grand final and a win. So I like Mcintyre. I like a lot of the talent that's on this Doggies team. So I'm going to go Western here. I'd be interested to hear, what do you guys have?
Well, Donnie and I must share a brain because I have the Doggies in this one too. Now, of course, the winner of this one gets the awesome, wonderful prize of either losing to the Lions or the Tigers in the next round. But you know, these are two teams that really kind of, I don't want to say they backed their way into the playoffs. It's been, or into this final. St. Kilda only won 2 of their final 5 games, and they had that big win over Ross's GWS in the last round to seal it.
Yeah, they did.
And the Doggies, they look dead and buried. They won 5 out of their last 6 to get into the finals. When you look at St. Kilda, again, this is a team of young players against a team of players with finals experience. I really like Jack Billings for St. Kilda. He's been averaging 19 disposals a game. Jack Steele has been 22 a game as well. They've been really high on this kid, Zach Jones, who's been playing out of the midfield as well. And Dan Butler is another guy who has really performed for them. But again, you look at star player, and some of the players for the Bulldogs were a part of that 2016 team. Marcus Bontempelli, Caleb Daniel, Tom Liberatore as well, Jason Johannesson, the South African guy. I think the Bulldogs will probably sneak this one out. As Donnie said, flip a coin, you can't really go wrong. I don't see this being decided by more than 2 goals. But again, these are teams that I think earned the right to play here, but I think are eventually going to be a sacrificial lamb in week 2.
Yeah, I think we can all agree about that. And would it be unprofessional to say that I did choose this game with the coin flip?
No,
because I actually
almost did the same thing.
I was really close. What it came down to me is that I look at how teams performed against each other during the regular season. They had two games against each other. They split them. And then I like to footy more than almost any sport in the world is a game of momentum. The Bulldogs are coming hot into the finals. They've won their last 3. Their only loss, in the last good handful, was against Geelong, which is clearly just a better team in the brackets. And there's also a thing because a lot of you might not know, my co-host on their other weekly episodes, Jalen, he chose a team is the Bulldogs, and he just has this insane luck of his team. Any team he chooses is doing extremely well, and it pisses me off to no end. But that's also there's just an aura around any team he picks just has success. Hope I'm kind of hoping my fingers crossed that I'm a little wrong just because I'm mad at him. But I got the Bulldogs taking this one too, to of course be said sacrificial lamb.
Doggies Nation will love the Jalen's on their train. They're hoping that they can run that, huh?
Right? I'm hoping that train gets derailed a little bit. I'm not mad. I'm not jealous. No.
I will say though, if you're a new fan and you kind of want to, you're looking for a good underdog, St. Kilda, they're an original VFL, AFL team in 1897. They have just one premiership to their name, and that was in 1966. Now the Bulldogs have
one, right?
Yeah, now the Bulldogs only have two, the one in 2016 and before that 1954. The longest current drought, by the way, is Melbourne, who haven't won since 1964. And of course, they're not in it this year. But if you want to pick a team to get behind, that's a good story. And St. Kilda, they've been one of those teams, just like Melbourne has, that's always seemed to be bringing up good youngsters and just kind of getting to that one level, but haven't been able to take the next step. I think next year is going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be a fun team to watch. I just don't see them, even if they do win. Like I said, I don't think they're up to the level of Richmond or Brisbane.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always fun to root for the underdog in any sport, especially if you don't have, forgive the pun, but if you don't have a dog in the fight. I'm really on top of it this show. Okay.
We need a rim shot. Sound effect.
You're the good news is that you don't have to be a father to do dad jokes. But anyway,
that's one thing that I've done. I am so ready in that terms, not in terms of actually being mature enough or financially stable. The two most important.
I'm ready
ones.
For the dad jokes.
Yeah, but I got the dad jokes. And I got the New Balances. Is there anything else you need?
There you go.
Yeah. Now, the last game of the qualifying round is going to be the Eagles and America's favorite, Magpies. All right? So, we all know that on behalf of the leg of the mighty Coxzilla, the Magpies are going all the way this year. They're taking that flag. Maybe not really. What do you guys think about this one?
No, they're not. This is a matter of the West Coast Eagles, who are a top 4 team that ended up in the 5th position, and the Collingwood Magpies team that just they have not done anything to impress me, especially down the stretch. They've had a lot of good individual performances. Jordan DeGoey, I think, is really stamped his name as being one of the more electrifying players in the league, just especially on the offensive side. You mentioned Cox, and Cox is going to, he has spurts in games. I find, there are sometimes during the course of the game where he'll take that really tough mark and then, or he'll take that tough mark and then go back and kick a goal. And then there are times when, he'll drop a sitter and you're kind of questioning his life. Kind of questioning the existence there. The Collingwood's going to want to go as far as they can for Scott Pendlebury, who just set the game's record with 314. I like Josh Dacos, who is in that he's related to Peter Dacos, the Macedonian marvel, who is like a little short bow-legged guy, who is very good around the front. Around the front of the pack. Brody Grundy as well is another great player to watch, but I like I said, I haven't been impressed with them over the last month of the season. Mm-hmm. And West Coast, who got off to a downright awful start, they had won. They at one point were down in, I think they were down in last place. They lost 3 out of their first 4, and then all of a sudden they won 8 in a row from week 5 all the way on to round 13. Little bit of difficulty against some of the better teams. They lost to Richmond in round 14, but they defeated St. Kilda and they defeated North Melbourne to end out the season. And I like some of the players here that have been around for a while. Of course, you can't think of West Coast without Nick Nat-Nui, and what kind of presence as a tall, a ruck who can go into the forward line as well. Andrew Gaff, whether you love him or you hate him, he's been averaging almost 25 possessions a game this year. Dom Sheed, who can kick from just about anywhere. Shannon Hearn, who again has been around forever. Luke Shuey. The Eagles. I think they're sharper. They could have very well have finished in the top 4 here, and they are my dark horse. I think they will easily beat the Magpies.
Yeah. Donnie, do you kind of share the same sentiment with this one?
I completely agree with all of that. But the biggest thing that I think, one of the things that I think that contributed to their giant win streak there in the middle of the year was home cooking. Mm-hmm. They were playing in Perth. Those first 4 of those first 5 games of the season, they were in the hubs and absolutely did not respond to playing in Queensland. Mm-hmm. Simpson was making excuses. The team just did not look like they wanted to be there. When they got back to Perth, their game changed. This game is being played in Perth. As much as I love Collingwood, and Collingwood has fans everywhere, Collingwood fans will be at this game. Mm-hmm. They did get DeGoey back, as he kind of said, and then they also have Treloar back. So they've got 2 of their better players. And again, Collingwood has been really, really beat up this season. Steele Sidebottom can't play because when he left to go see the birth of his first child, and you still got some of the major injuries. I completely agree with Mason Cox. He literally is. He's kind of like he's Jekyll and Hyde. He's on, he's off. He's on, he's off. He's on, he's off. His game really, he benefits from great service. If he can have the ball put on his head to where he can go up and use his massive body to body up and to either tap it down to some of his small forwards, but the Eagles, they have so many good intercept markers in Jeremy McGovern and so many solid players in the back. He has struggled against the Eagles. Okay, he has not played very well against the Eagles, and I think in some situations, this is going to show kind of the weaknesses a little bit of this Collingwood team. Is that do they have the service for Mason Cox? Where it's like you've got Kennedy, you've got Darling, you've got Flying Lee and Ryan, you've got a lot of very scary talent. And a very kind of beat up backline. Yeah, you got Darcy Moore back there, who's great, but Jeremy Howe's out for the year. So what are your best intercept marks for Collingwood's not playing? So I completely agree with Brian here. I have the Eagles, A, because they're at home, and B, it's just I don't think Collingwood has enough to be able to withstand the Eagles at home. If this game was being played in Queensland, I would have leaned a little bit more towards Collingwood, a little bit more than I am. But the fact that this game is played in Perth, which fits West Coast style a lot more, I'm going to have to go with the Eagles on this one.
Well, I feel really confident with my picks so far because I'm almost agreeing with the fourth line experts when it comes to Australian football. So, don't laugh and just take that as a compliment, okay?
I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing near you.
But I feel good. I'm agreeing so far with you guys because, yeah, I got the Eagles. My problem with the Magpies is in this matchup in general, I really just believe the Eagles are just an all-around better team than the Magpies. If Mason Cox is able to get on the run and he's able to play his peak, they might have a chance. But I really just don't see it happening. The Magpies almost limping and just kind of barely making their way into the finals. The Eagles are a cemented finals team for the majority of the season. And then it's about the birds too. If you want to just look at some people, I know some people don't know what to choose. They choose a cool mascot. I'm taking Eagle over Magpie. And also, if we just want to look at the Guernseys, man, if the Eagles can bust out those indigenous round, the Guernseys that they wore with the eagle wings on them, looking all majestic, running around that pitch. Oh yeah, the Magpies are in for a long night. But I got the Eagles on this one.
Yeah, Perth that stadium is very, very tough place to play, and as Donnie mentioned, right on the nose. Now this is their only going to be their only home game, no matter what happens. They're going to have to go on the road. So the question is will they be able to take that magic on the road if they are able to get back in this round? And for the answers to that, we'll find out when we go a little bit further.
And we'll find out right now because we're going to the semifinals, and the first matchup that we all agreed on is that it's going to be Port Adelaide and the Eagles. And man, this game was really a tough one for me to choose, because I mean, Port Adelaide, you really had to respect them for going post to post. They're the best team. They had the most points. But at the same time, the Eagles are a really, really competitive team. Like you said, one of you guys, the dark horse for this whole thing. And I really want to choose yeah, Brian, thank you. I really want to choose the Eagles in this one. I really did. But at the same time, I don't know. I have to respect what Port Adelaide did this year. And so with that respect, I got PA in this one.
Yeah, I don't. I think Port. Here's the thing, and as I do think Port's going to kind of resemble what Brisbane did last year. I think, they're a feel good story. You look at some of them. Justin Westhoff said he's going to retire at the end of the season. He's been around more than a decade, and they are again good young talent, good young team. I think they'll come back next year and make a run. I think their special sauce has kind of run out here. And again, West Coast is a different team on the road. I think they could win in Adelaide Oval against Port in this one. So I'm going to pick the Eagles.
I just think to me, it's tough picking the power to lose back-to-back games in the finals.
Yeah, it's hard to do that when they have gone. And I don't remember. And we were talking about this before we came on air. I don't remember ever going through a season where the top two teams, where there was just absolutely no confidence in the top two teams.
It's weird.
Yeah.
2020.
that is such the perfect explanation here. So since you guys are split, I guess that makes me the tiebreaker.
It's up to you. It's up to you, D-Train.
Oh boy. See here, I'm gonna lean a little bit more towards Ross on this one. It's the fact that Port is at home, and they played really, really well at home. In fact, one of their biggest wins was over Richmond and Port Adelaide. But then again, though, I went back a little bit, and Brian would know this too, is that one of the biggest bugaboos for Port has been West Coast in the last few years, is that West Coast twice now has went into Port Adelaide and won in game-winning kicks after the siren. McGovern, and I think it was Shuey in one of the playoffs in extra time. So West Coast has the ability to win there, but this is a different West Coast team. I don't know what it is, but they leave the home cook in a Perth, and they're just not the same. Mm-hmm. That game against North Melbourne at the last game of the year really was not good. That was really kind of scary for me a little bit. It's the only reason why there for a while I actually even thought about putting Collingwood through in this one. For me, I like Port at home. Port has played really, really well in the Adelaide Oval this year, and for me, I think after the loss to Geelong, I think they pull this one out. I like the Eagles, but the Eagles are just so inconsistent. Not having Elliot Yeo will really hurt them in this game because Port's midfield is a little bit stronger than Collingwood's is, even if they do have Trelaw back. So for me, the Yeo loss really kills them in this. I think Port bounces back. I have Port moving on, but this is another one that I sat and I argued with myself because West Coast plays well at Port. They've won a couple of games there, and after the siren, this was literally another one of those, like a lot of the games this year in the finals, you could literally flip a coin and be just as accurate as sitting here going through stats and going through who's on form and so on and so forth, because so many of these top 8 teams are so similar. It's scary.
Sorry, Ross, you mentioned that extra time game. That was the last finals game to go into extra time in 2017. And I believe that game was won after the siren. Yep. West Coast won that game by 2 points at Adelaide Oval. So it is possible for them to do it, and they did that as the 8th seed that year. So I wouldn't rule that out if it gets to that point.
See, if we're talking about these after siren games, as long as we don't get anything, if we want to go back a few rounds to that old Freo and Carlton one, that As long as we don't get that in the finals.
The ending to that game was a controversial because Luke Shuey ducked into that. If you ask most Port Adelaide fans, he ducked into that tackle.
Oh, he definitely ducked into it.
He did. I completely agree with you. I watched it. He ducked, and Polak got him high. Polak got him high because of the duck. The referee didn't see it. He whistled. Shuey buries it after the siren goes off, and West Coast walks out of the port, and the Port Adelaide fans want to burn the place down.
If you want to go back,
nuts.
if you want to go back to the history portion of this, I just want to explain, by the way, that up until 1990 or 91, that tied games in the final series were replayed the following week. It wasn't until 1991 that extra time in the finals was introduced, and it's 2 5-minute periods. You play it's like soccer. You play both 5 minutes so that each team goes. Each team is going each direction for 5 minutes. But the grand final was that they didn't take that rule out in the grand final until 2015, the end of the 2015 season. It's happened 3 times. The grand final has ended in a tie: 1948, 1977, and 2010. And Donnie, I think you may have been watching that as well. It was 10 years ago this week, watching that game between Collingwood and St. Kilda and getting asked questions. I still remember Philadelphia Hawks coach John Loring coming up to me and going, "Barrish, what happens what happens if it's tied at the end of regulation?" I was like, "They got to come back and play again next week." And he's like, "You're kidding." I was like, "Nope, they're going to come back." And that's exactly what they have.
Don't tie then. Don't tie.
Yeah.
To go off of that, I was actually at a grand final party over at Tyler Cameron's place.
Yes.
And when the final siren went off, everybody looked at Paul and went, what's going on? And Paul's our Australian is on the team. They're like, "Oh yeah, they're coming back next week." And we're like, "What?" Like, yeah, they don't play extra time. They have a replay next week.
Hey,
Like,
second
really?
party.
There's
Hell yeah.
no overtime at all. They didn't even. So then the next week, we all watched it at home because nobody wanted to do another party.
Yeah, there was no second party.
Damn.
And the funny part about it is the next game was a blowout. And
Oh, it wasn't even close.
Collingwood literally destroyed St. Kilda. It was like a 50-point final margin. It was insane. But it was like, it just shows you how different the game was. And if I saw correctly, they just passed a rule that this year would be the last year they would potentially play a replay. Next year they will go to extra time.
No, they made that rule. They made that rule in 2016 was the first year that was in effect. So it has been for a couple of years. No, the rule that they changed was it's not golden point. They'll keep playing because originally if extra time was still tied, they would keep playing until there was a winner. Now there was going to be 2 more sessions of extra time until there's one, kind of like basketball, except there's 2 periods. That was the rule that they changed for this year.
Well,
because heaven forbid we have a replay. Darn it, because replay was fun.
It was fun, and
I love extra game. It's just more footy. Yeah. Who's like complaining about that?
Any fish.
Pretty much.
Now, the other semifinal game differs from me and you two. So let's start with mine real quick so we can get that one out of the way. So it's going to be between the Tigers and the Saints. And Tigers win this one. I mean, it's not going to be close. Or, sorry, the Bulldogs. Sorry, Tigers and Bulldogs. I don't see this one being close. I really like Richmond and what they have going down there.
If that does happen, though, that'd be a good game.
Yeah. But for you two fellas, it's more of Bulldogs and Lions.
Yeah, and as good as we've been talking about the Bulldogs, again, I don't think they're in the class that the top 4 or 5 teams in the league are. I have the Lions winning this game. All the crap we talked about the Lions when they were playing the Tigers, I think they're still a much better team than they are against Footscray, and I see them winning and going to the preliminary final.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think Brisbane's just got a little too much more talent. I think Western really kind of use a lot of energy to get in. I think they can beat St. Kilda because St. Kilda is a little more talent-wise even with them.
Mm-hmm.
But if Brisbane plays up to expectations, Brisbane should win this. Charlie Cameron is absolutely insane up front. Lockie Neal, who I think is going to win the Brownlow, in my honest opinion. I don't see too many people giving him much of a run. He's an absolute monster in the midfield. For me, I'll take the Lions in this one, but I do think it will be a close game. I think Western will keep this close. This isn't going to be a blowout. This is going to be a game, couple of goals max. But I will go with the Lions in this one. But it won't shock me if the Doggies pull it off, though.
Okay. And now rolling on into the preliminary finals. In my bracket, since the Tigers go back and whoop on the Bulldogs, they cross over to take on the Geelong Cats. We got the Battle of the Cats with this one. There's a lot of fun mascot matches with this one. We got the Battle of the Birds, Battle of the Cats. I love it. But I think Geelong. This game hurt to pick. If I'm being honest, this game really is. It was another one of those coin flip games, because it's tough. With this one though, I end up having to roll with the Geelong Cats. I really did.
I don't think that's a bad pick at all, no matter who they pick. I have them going up against the Lions because I picked the Lions to lose and then win to get back into the preliminary final. But it's the same thing as before. I think Geelong overall looks a lot better than the Lions do. I mean, this Lions team, I think, is definitely as good, if not better, than the team last year. And all those X factors that we mentioned when we were talking about it against Port Adelaide, Hawkins and Dangerfield and Ablett, et cetera. I think they're better than the Lions, so I have them going to the grand final in this case.
Well, Brian and we continue the lifeline streak here.
Can we get some clashing of heads, man? Oh, you guys are too similar.
Who knows? The grand final might be interesting. I'm really interested to see who he's got in the grand final myself. But I agree. The Cats experience, they're battle hardened. The Lions, I think the bounce back win over Western would be nice for them. But for me, their goal kicking it absolutely is a killer. And even with Geelong being the home team in that situation, so they will not be at the Gabba, might help them out a little bit. But I think the Cats, they're just so good, so strong. They're so resilient. There's so many guys that can play different roles. If the Cats play the type of footy they can, they are so hard to beat when they're on. The question is that sometimes after bye weeks, they struggle. This is a team that for some weird reason under Chris Scott, they have this hex on them. After a bye week, they don't play well. I don't know what it is. I just have not figured out why. So Brisbane will test them. I'm just by paper. Again, this is all on paper because we don't know injuries. We don't know so many things. There's
so much could happen between the first two rounds,
I have the Cats in this one, but Brisbane will make this a game. This will not be a blowout. There's so many games this year. I'll be shocked if there's many blowouts in this year's playoffs because so many of these teams are so close. I'm going to put the Cats in the final, but Brizzy will make this a close game. No more than a goal and a half, max.
So that brings us to the most important matchup out of any of this. It doesn't matter what we had in the qualifiers, in the semis, in the prelims. It all comes down to who we got in the grand finals, gentlemen. And so, Brian.
You skipped the game.
Oh, damn, I did.
Gotta get the other game.
Unbelievable. That is my bad, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I had the good spiel for that too. Maybe I'll just cut that out. Who knows? We'll see.
Keep it up, mate.
I'm too excited. I'm too excited for my first grand final.
I'm so excited, and I just can't hide it.
He did the same thing around 14 and 15. He was so excited Adelaide won.
I know, man.
Round 14.
Well, we had to talk about the Crows winning. We had to talk about the grand final. We'll get there in a second.
I wish they would have beat Richmond in the last one because then I would have done a power rankings just to stick them in, just to be like, hey, Adelaide won 4 out of the last 5.
That would have been fun. I wish. But this last one, this last game of the prelims, it's going to be Port Adelaide taking on the Tigers. And I think Port Adelaide, for me, they barely survived losing back-to-back games. And this is where it just catches up. Richmond is just all around, but I think they're a way more balanced team. and I love the chaos that they bring, as you alluded to earlier, Donnie. Um, it, and then Port Adelaide has just been underwhelming to me, mostly. So I am going to have the Tigers take them out. The Tigers will advance to the grand finals.
I'll go. It doesn't matter who the Tigers play here, whether they play Port, whether they play the West Coast Eagles, whether they play the Philadelphia Eagles, whether they play the Rajasthan Royals or the Gas House Gorillas. I think the Tigers are going to win this game. I think they have way too much class, and I have them playing West Coast. And like I said, West Coast are a top 5 team or a top 4 team playing outside the top 5. They are most likely going to be playing this game in Queensland, and I think by this time, I think they'll be absolutely gassed by the time they roll into this into this preliminary final. I have the Tigers winning and going to the grand final and playing Geelong.
Oh yeah.
And I've got Port Richmond, and the biggest thing is that kind of like how Ross was going is that you look at how the game went earlier in the year. Yes, Port was one of the few teams that has beat Richmond in the last month and a half. But the other thing that I look at it too is that was not full strength Richmond. That was not Richmond on a roll. That was not Richmond with a ton of momentum coming into the finals or coming into this preliminary final at this stage of where we're at. Richmond is just so good when they get going. Unless Port, in my situation, can maintain the footing, make sure that they hit the scoreboard every time they go inside 50, or at least every other time they go inside 50, Richmond will pepper the goals if they can get their pressure going, and they always find a way to do it. The biggest question will be is the bye week coming in, how does it affect who? Like I said, we're kind of like previously with Geelong. Richmond doesn't usually seem to have a problem with the bye week. How does Port respond since they'll have an extra game under their belts? Sometimes that first quarter can be a little iffy sometimes because with the team that's had the bye week because they're a little rusty because they've had that extra week of non-play. This will be a close game. This will be a tough game. This will be a hard game. This will be one of the best games in the final if it is Port Richmond here. I have Richmond, but it's going to be close. I think it's under a goal. I think it's 5 points max. This is going to be a doozy. The only game I think that'll be better is who we have in the grand final.
So now is time for the grand final.
You're on.
We're good. We're good to go now. It's just a little premature. It's all good.
Yeah.
I promise that doesn't happen often.
He just jumped the shark.
Oh, gosh, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So let's, AFL correspondent Donnie Hess, kick us off. Your grand final prediction.
Grand final, Richmond Tigers versus Geelong Cats. A rematch from a few weeks ago where Richmond really kind of handed the Cats their rear end there for a bit till the Cats decided to play in the fourth quarter. I think this is going to be a tough, hard game. The biggest question will be is the night situation. The night game will be interesting to see how the dew affects the game. In my opinion, dew potentially, which a lot of teams are discussing in the AFL, I think the dew actually helps out Richmond because it makes the game sloppy. It makes the game grindy. It makes the game kind of physical. Geelong is that silky team. They play with a lot of talent, a lot of skill, but when the ball hits the ground, Richmond's speed, their pressure, their momentum, everything like that. I'm not a big dynasty person. I never have been, but I can't deny the form that the Tigers have been on in the last 4 seasons. If it weren't for Mason Cox from a couple of years ago, the Tigers may be going for 4 in a row. That's how good the Tigers have been. It is hard to see the Cats winning this game just because of the fact that you're going to have the situation with the night game in Brisbane. It's going to be warm. Richmond is so good in the fourth quarter. I'm going to go with the Tigers. I'd like to see the Cats win just because it potentially could be Gary Ablett Jr.'s last game as a footballer. He could retire. And you always want to see the greats go out with a championship. That'd be awesome. I cannot deny the fact that these Tigers are just so good. So for me, the grand final winner is the Richmond Tigers. So Richmond Army, though we've had our issues earlier in the season on this particular podcast, I gotta tip my cap to you, and I think you guys will be the ones hosting the flag after the end of this year.
Your picks, Brian.
I'm not a dynasty guy either. I was more into Falcon Crest and Dallas when they were on back in the 80s. The night game, as Donnie mentioned, and it's going to create that wet football. It's all about how teams do it at what's called ground level. When the ball is on the ground, who's able to pick it up cleanly, who's able to do that. Not that Geelong can't. I think that Richmond does, as Donnie says, is going to benefit from that scrappy, bad weather game. I also tend to think that they are going to have, more, I think, in terms of the crowd. Geelong, they tend to travel pretty well. There are a lot of Geelong fans across the country. I think Richmond, they are the biggest club in terms of membership, more than 100,000 people. That is like, I don't know, half the country. It isn't, but I'm being facetious. But I don't see if Richmond, I don't see any other team really doing, going as well over the next 3 games, as the Tigers do. Even if they happen to lose that first game to Brisbane, I don't see them faltering. And it's kind of, you stand back, and Donnie put it so succinctly. Mason Cox having that huge game in the 2018 preliminary final is the only thing that's possibly standing in the way. I mean, obviously, these finals, but when you think about how far this team has come, that in 2016 they finished in 13th place, and there were people that were tearing up their memberships all the way through and saying, we're walking away from this club, and who would have thought Damian Hardwick, would have been able to turn this program around. And now we're staring down the barrel of 3 finals in 4 years, 3 grand finals in 4 years. I like them. I don't care what way they go through. I think they're going to win. And in a game against the Cats, I think it'll be a close game until the third quarter, and then I think Dusty and company will just stomp home.
See, I guess I gotta be that guy. I'm going with the Cats on this one. It's really just the feeling that I've had. It might be just my freshness to the sport, but the common thing that I've seen, as I mentioned in our opening round, was Tom Hawkins and Patrick Dangerfield are just they're just phenomenal players, and then Geelong has really just been gnawing at the top of with the best of the best the whole season. And from anything I've seen out of them, it's just the goal scoring. From Hawkins in his consistency. That's what's really put him over in my eyes. Love as we've talked about, Donnie especially, just the versatility of Dangerfield. Now the worry, of course, as you mentioned, the dew. It's the bad field conditions, but also I will admit that I made this with the ignorance of not thinking about dew. Because, that's just not something I typically think about in sports, is how is dew going to affect a football game. So forgive me. But, I don't know. I really, really do like, for the points made about the Tigers, I really, really do like, if it gets into a scrappy game, it's hard not to go with the Tigers. But assuming it's just a typical, I guess, football game, of course, we're making so many assumptions as we go through this entire list. Everything's on paper. I just like how the Geelong Cats perform. I just like how they are in the 50. When they get into the 50, they're probably scoring. They got range, and they have just versatility across the field. They have talent. So, yeah, my first grand final that I'm ever going to watch. I got the Cats taking it all.
That's not I don't think that's a bad pick. I'm just saying that you're going to be wrong. No, I think if there's any team besides the Tigers, I think it is going to be the Cats. I just don't see, again, I don't remember ever following a season where there just has not been a lot of confidence in the top two teams. What I will do is we ran a poll, and I'll pull this up if you guys want to talk for the next minute or so.
Yeah, we got a minute or so.
Well, the USAFL. Well, I was going to say the USAFL on the account. I did what was called head versus heart, where I asked people,
that was a good poll.
Whether I basically pick people who you think would win versus who you wanted to win. And I will give you, if you are interested in that, I will give you who I think, who our many followers think will win. Now it's just for the first four
now, of course,
games.
you can find his Twitter account at
USAFL 1997.
There we go.
All right. Do you want this real quick?
Yes, sir.
All right. So Power and Cats. Okay, I thought that was actually going to work. We'll do it this way. TweetDeck does not like does not like. I know that some of the games were pretty close and some of them weren't as. This is something, by the way, that I've done every year, I think, for the last, 3 or 4 years over this. And we've gotten about 350 votes. That's or
awesome.
so.
Well, if TweetDeck just wants to be rude, no big problem, because I can just link everything, and you can just go follow the the official USAFL Twitter account anyway, because that's the best part, right?
So here's what we have. We've got 50%. Here it is. It's actually 51 to 50 think the Power will be, or 51 to 49 thinks the Power will win. But it looks like 60% think that want the Power to win in that one. With the Lions and the Tigers, 80% think that the Tigers will win, but 70% think that want the Lions to win. With the Dogs and the Saints, it looks like 57% want the Saints to win, but 52% think the Dogs will win. So that one's a lot closer. And then the Eagles and the Magpies, 90% think that the Eagles will win, but only 61% want the Eagles to win. So even the Magpie
the American fan base. We need Coxzilla.
But anyway,
he's a very interesting character. But actually, I actually did do those. And I was actually kind of surprised. Most of the ones that I chose ended up being the higher voting ones, because I think I did. I think I picked. I think Geelong will win, but I want Port to win. I think I think Richmond will win, but I want the Lions to win. Like I kind of went through it. It's like, which would I prefer? Like, you get the dynasty team like the Richmonds. It's like I kind of see Brisbane win that game, but it's hard to argue that. But
exactly,
the biggest thing I would say to you two guys is just looking at the bracket 5 through 8. I know we kind of went through what we really think is going to happen, but right now, dark horse 5, 6, 7, or 8. Who's the team you think might actually pull the crazy 2016 Western Bulldogs and
West Coast? Has to be.
Yeah.
They're the only ones with a legitimate chance, I really think. Anyway, St. Kilda, Bulldogs, Collingwood. I don't see it.
I have two. I agree with you guys with West Coast. If West Coast can get their game going, they're one of the few teams that I think that can beat Richmond, because they are a ball control team. They're very good. If they can kick mark, they can keep Richmond from getting their pressure up, and having Darling and Kennedy up forward really frustrates the Richmond defense, because it's so hard for them to play off and be able to get intercept marks, because they have to man these guys up. And with the experience and talent that they have in their back line with Barras and McGovern and Sheed back there, they can kick and get out of the pressure that Richmond has. My biggest thing is that with their struggles outside of Perth really kill them. But for me too is I like Western a little bit too as being that other dark horse, because I think if they will not see Richmond until the final if Richmond wins. So they wouldn't even see the Tigers until the finals, because they would flip brackets and then play the winner of Geelong Port if they play Brisbane, so on and so forth, if Brisbane were to lose. I like Western just because they're one of those teams that when they get hot, and their game style plays really well too. They play a lot of handballs. They go through the corridor. They play with a lot of speed. They got a lot of young talent. If they can get going, they're a tough team. And so for me, I actually would have two. I would have West Coast and Western would be the two outside the top four. I think have a chance, but they do have to have a few things happen for them for this to happen.
Well, it doesn't matter because we all know it's the Collingwood Magpies on the legs of the 6'10" behemoth down there in the land down under. They're going all the way. But fellas, that is going to wrap it for us. We have our dark horses, our winners, and it has really just been an honor having our man Donnie Hess back on the show, and then Brian Barrish being able to make his second appearance on the Fourth and Long. And we love both of you so much, just with what you bring in terms of footing, also just what you bring with a little bit of on-screen entertainment as well.
The feeling is mutual.
Then, of course, everyone's... yeah.
It has been a pleasure, but the biggest thing I got to ask for you, Ross, is do you think we could talk Brian, yourself, maybe even Jalen into a grand final preview? Wouldn't that be a fun show?
We're going to have to.
At the end of the season?
We got to do it.
It's a must. It's a must. So, everyone, we're watch these few weeks, but then stay tuned for that grand final preview because we're going to wait till we're all wrong and none of us have our grand final predictions right in this show, so we have to change and come up with new ones, right?
Well, we got to pick one game.
If Chris Collingsworth was here, he would say the Cowboys would win, but that's another story altogether.
And with that,
scene,
right? Perfect. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Of course, everything will be linked. You can go check these guys out. Check out the USAFL, please. Just have a great finals. And before we go, just got to plug the merch. Brand new Footy is Underrated shirts are on the store. Go check those out. Nice tri-blend cotton. I'm not even just saying this is one of my favorite shirts just from the comfort. I was very impressed. So go check that out. Check us out. Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, YouTube. We're everywhere. Have a great time watching the finals, and we will catch you guys in our grand finals preview.